Have you ever noticed how sometimes the kindest people get taken for granted? Maybe you've spent your whole life trying to do good, to help, to be fair, and yet the world doesn't always seem to reward that effort. Instead, it's the ones who know how to play the game, who understand the rules beneath the surface, that often come out ahead. But what if I told you that being good doesn't mean being naive? That true wisdom comes from understanding both the light and the shadows of human nature. Niccolò Machiavelli is often misunderstood. His name is thrown around as if he were the villain of history, a man who only cared about power and manipulation. But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? What if, hidden in his words, are lessons that can actually protect good people, people like you? Lessons that don't tell you to abandon kindness, but instead to strengthen it with wisdom so that your goodness isn't mistaken for weakness. You see, as we get older, we realize that the world isn't always as simple as we once thought. Being too trusting can leave us vulnerable. Always giving, without understanding when to set boundaries, can drain us, and sometimes the very people we help are the ones who turn away when we need them most. Does that mean we should stop being kind? Of course not, but it does mean we need to understand how to navigate the complexities of life. That's where Machiavelli comes in. He didn't say, be ruthless. He said, be smart. He didn't say, give up on kindness. He said, understand the nature of people. He believed that true power and true security comes from knowing when to be soft and when to be strong. That's a lesson worth learning, no matter your age. Think about it. Have you ever met someone who was too nice for their own good? Maybe they were always lending money, always saying yes, always putting others first, only to find that people took advantage of them. Maybe you've been that person at some point in your life. Machiavelli would say that goodness without wisdom is a trap, but goodness with awareness is a strength. Take trust, for example. We're taught that trust is the foundation of all relationships. And that's true, but Machiavelli would ask, do you trust wisely or do you trust blindly? He believed that not everyone deserves our full trust, at least not immediately. Instead, he suggested we observe first. Watch how people behave, not just what they say. Give trust in layers, based on actions, not just words. It's not about being suspicious, it's about being smart. Now let's talk about kindness. We've all been told, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But what happens when you give, and others don't return the same respect? Machiavelli believed that kindness should be given with intention, not just freely without thought. If you're too generous with no boundaries, people may see it as an invitation to take more. But if you're strategic with your kindness, giving when it matters to those who value it, you not only protect yourself, but you make your kindness more meaningful. And what about reputation? We spend a lifetime building our character, being honest, doing the right thing. But Machiavelli reminds us that the world sees us not just by our intentions, but by our actions and how we present ourselves. It's not enough to be good, we must also be perceived as strong. That doesn't mean pretending to be someone you're not, but it does mean carrying yourself with confidence, knowing when to speak up, and ensuring that your kindness isn't mistaken for weakness. This isn't about changing who you are, it's about strengthening who you are. Being good is a gift, but being good and wise, that's a power few people truly understand. Machiavelli's lessons aren't about becoming ruthless. They're about making sure that your goodness is protected so that you can live with both kindness and respect. Because at the end of the day, you deserve both. And that's exactly what we're going to explore. But here's where things get complicated. You see, being good, being kind, honest, and generous is what we're all taught to strive for. And for the most part, those values serve us well. They help us build trust, maintain relationships, and create a life that feels meaningful. But Machiavelli, ever the realist, warned that goodness alone isn't always enough. In fact, in the wrong hands, or in the wrong circumstances, our goodness can be used against us. Imagine a person who always says yes, who always gives without hesitation, who always believes in the best of others. what happens? Eventually, someone comes along who takes advantage of that kindness. They see an opportunity and they seize it. They manipulate, they deceive, they extract as much as they can, because they know the person in front of them will not fight back. Machiavelli's insight was this: if you only rely on goodness, you will be at the mercy of those who do not. Now, does that mean we should abandon our morals? No, not at all, but it does mean that we must be strategic about when and how we apply them. It means that goodness, when combined with wisdom, is far more powerful than goodness alone. Let me give you an example. There's a story about an old farmer who had a beautiful horse. One day, a group of thieves came and tried to steal it. But the farmer, knowing how the world worked, had trained his horse to resist strangers. Every time someone unfamiliar approached, the horse would rear back and refuse to be led away. The thieves eventually gave up, and the horse remained safe. The farmer was kind, but he was also wise. He knew that goodness without protection was an open invitation for those with bad intentions. Machiavelli would say that to survive in this world, we must learn to balance kindness with caution, generosity with boundaries, and trust with discernment. This isn't about becoming cold or ruthless. It's about recognizing that not everyone will play by the same rules we do. Think about your own life. Have you ever been in a situation where you gave too much, where you trusted the wrong person, where your kindness was mistaken for weakness? It happens to all of us. And the lesson here isn't to stop being good. It's to be good in a way that protects you, in a way that ensures your goodness isn't exploited. And that brings us to a crucial point. Machiavelli believed that the most effective leaders, the ones who truly changed history, were not the ones who were simply good. They were the ones who understood when to be good and when to be strong. It's this ability to shift between kindness and firmness, between trust and skepticism, that makes someone truly powerful. So what does that mean for us? How do we apply this in our everyday lives? Well, the first step is awareness. The moment we recognize that pure goodness can sometimes backfire, we begin to see the world differently. We begin to understand that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. That saying no isn't cruel, it's wise. That expecting fairness from everyone isn't realistic, it's a recipe for disappointment. And once we embrace that truth, we can start making choices that protect us, that empower us, and that allow our goodness to shine without being taken for granted. Now, there's one more lesson from Machiavelli that ties all of this together, a lesson that might surprise you. It's about perception. You see, how people perceive us often determines how they treat us. And if we appear too soft, too forgiving, too endlessly giving, we may invite the very treatment we want to avoid. But if we carry ourselves with quiet strength, with the confidence of someone who knows when to say yes and when to say no, we send a different message. And that message is simple. I am kind, but I am not weak. I am generous, but I am not naive. I will help you, but I will not let you take advantage of me. That shift alone changes everything. And that shift, the moment we decide to balance kindness with strength, is when real change begins. Because here's the truth. People treat us based on what we allow. If we always say yes, they will always ask for more. If we never set limits, they will assume there are none. If we constantly forgive without consequence, they will learn that there are no real consequences. Machiavelli understood something that many of us learn the hard way. The world does not reward passive goodness. It rewards those who know when to stand firm, when to walk away, and when to make difficult choices. And while that may sound harsh, it's actually freeing. It means that we don't have to be afraid of saying no. We don't have to feel guilty for putting ourselves first. We don't have to apologize for protecting what is ours, our time, our energy, our peace. But let's take it a step further. What does this look like in real life? How do we actually apply this wisdom in our daily interactions? Picture this. You have a friend, someone you've known for years. They're always in a crisis, always asking for your help, always taking up your time. And because you're a good person,
You keep saying yes, but over time, you start to notice something. The more you give, the less they appreciate it. The more you help, the less they help themselves. Suddenly, your kindness has become an expectation, not a gift. Now, what would Machiavelli say? He'd tell you that your goodness is being used against you, not by an evil person, but by someone who has learned that you will always be there, no matter what. And that, right there, is where the balance must come in. It's not about cutting them off completely. It's about making a shift, teaching them, through your actions, that your time and energy are valuable. So maybe the next time they call, instead of immediately dropping everything, you take a pause. You ask yourself, is this truly an emergency, or is this just another situation they want me to solve for them? And if it's the latter, you set a new boundary. Maybe you say, I'd love to help, but I can't right now. Maybe you let them figure it out on their own. Maybe, for the first time, you put yourself first. And what happens next? They adjust. At first, they might be surprised, even frustrated, but over time, they learn that your kindness is not unlimited, that your generosity has limits, and that if they want your help, they need to respect your time. That is what Machiavelli meant when he said that leaders must be both loved and feared. Not feared in the sense of cruelty, but in the sense that people must know there are consequences for mistreating you. They must respect you enough to value your time, your effort, your presence. Now let's step back for a moment and talk about something even deeper, something most people never think about. What happens when we live our entire lives only trying to be good? What happens when we avoid confrontation, when we bend over backward to please everyone, when we let things slide just to keep the peace? At first, it feels like the right thing to do. It feels noble. But over time, something starts to change. Resentment builds. We start feeling unappreciated, unseen, even invisible. And worst of all, we start losing respect, not just from others, but from ourselves. And that, right there, is the real danger of unchecked goodness. It doesn't just allow others to take advantage of us. It erodes our own sense of self-worth. So what's the solution? How do we keep our kindness without letting it be our downfall? The answer lies in one simple truth. Kindness must be a choice, not an obligation. We must choose when to give, when to help, when to sacrifice, but never because we feel like we have no other option. True kindness comes from a place of strength, not weakness. And that strength comes from knowing our worth, from setting boundaries, and from understanding that not everyone deserves unlimited access to our time, energy, and goodwill. And here's the best part. When we start living this way, when we embrace both our goodness and our strength, everything changes. Our relationships improve. The right people respect us more. The wrong people drift away. And most importantly, we stop feeling drained, used, or unappreciated because we have finally learned what Machiavelli tried to teach us all along. The world belongs not to the endlessly giving, but to those who know when to give and when to say enough.
And that realization that we have the right to set limits, that we are not obligated to pour from an empty cup, changes everything. Because once we start making decisions from a place of self-respect rather than guilt, we reclaim something precious: control. Control over our time, control over our emotions, control over who we allow into our lives and how much of ourselves we give. Machiavelli wasn't telling us to be cruel. He wasn't suggesting that we should stop caring, stop helping, stop being the good people we are. No, his message was far more nuanced. He was saying that if we want to be truly effective, if we want our kindness to mean something, we have to be intentional with it. Because kindness given without boundaries isn't kindness at all, it's self-sacrifice. And self-sacrifice, without balance, leads to exhaustion, resentment, and ultimately, regret. But what does this actually look like in everyday life? How do we take this philosophy and apply it in a way that protects us without making us feel like we're losing our compassion? It starts with a simple question. Is this an act of kindness? Or am I doing this because I feel I have to? That question alone changes everything. It forces us to pause before we say yes. It makes us consider whether we're giving out of love or obligation. And if it's the latter, if we feel pressured, manipulated, or drained, then we know it's time to set a boundary. Maybe that means saying no to yet another favor from someone who never returns the kindness. Maybe it means pulling back from a relationship where we are constantly giving and receiving nothing in return. Maybe it means finally speaking up when we're being taken for granted. At first, this shift feels uncomfortable. We've been conditioned to believe that good people should always say yes, that good people should never disappoint others, that good people should be endlessly available. But here's what no one tells us. Saying no doesn't make you bad. It makes you wise. Because when you protect your time, your energy, and your emotional well-being, something incredible happens. The people who truly value you will respect your boundaries. They will understand. They will adjust. And the people who were only there because they could take from you, they will leave. And that is how you separate those who love you from those who simply use you. It's a powerful transformation, one that Machiavelli understood centuries ago, one that we, if we choose, can embrace today. So let's leave behind the idea that we must always be agreeable, always be available, always be accommodating. Let's instead embrace a new philosophy, to be both kind and strong, to give, but only when it serves a purpose, to love, but only when that love is valued, to help, but only when it does not come at the cost of ourselves. Because at the end of the day, life isn't about pleasing everyone. It's about respecting ourselves enough to make sure that when we give, we do so on our own terms. That is the true balance of power. That is the real lesson Machiavelli wanted us to learn. And that is the kind of wisdom that will not only protect us, but set us free. The dark side of goodness. A Machiavellian perspective. At its core, this philosophy challenges the traditional notion that goodness alone is enough to navigate the complexities of life. While kindness and morality are noble virtues, Machiavelli reminds us that they must be balanced with wisdom, strategy, and self-preservation. Blind generosity can be exploited, and endless self-sacrifice can lead to resentment and exhaustion. True goodness is not about pleasing everyone or always saying yes. It's about knowing when to give and when to withhold, when to help and when to step back. Power and kindness are not enemies. In fact, they must coexist for either to be truly effective. Machiavelli teaches us that being good does not mean being weak. Strength lies in setting boundaries, in choosing where to invest our time and energy, and in recognizing that not everyone deserves our sacrifice. The greatest kindness we can offer, to both ourselves and others, is a kindness that is given deliberately, with thought and purpose. To live by this philosophy is to embrace both wisdom and compassion, ensuring that our goodness is not a weakness, but a source of true strength.